Hello and welcome to an episode of AVR Gaming. My name is Jacob and today I'm doing another city world tour. And believe it or not, I think it has been at least a year since I last uploaded a video to this channel or about this Minecraft build that I've been working on. So a lot has actually happened since then. As you can see, I've got the world loaded in here, and I've got the piece de resistance of my Tokyo-inspired city before your eyes here, that being Tokyo Tower. And since the last time I actually filmed anything or put up a video, there's been the, I think it was 1.19 update, 1.18, whatever it was, the update where they actually increased the world height. So I'm actually able to build proper big skyscrapers now, and since then I've actually slightly increased the point of this tower, so it's a little bit beyond the old world height now. Still not quite at the right height. I think I need to extend the middle a little bit more, and then it might actually be pretty close to the height that it is in real life, which is like 350 meters as opposed to like the 250 meters that we got previously in Minecraft as the world height. You may have also noticed I actually have some shaders packs installed, so we got some nicer, more dynamic lighting. Hopefully it'll work well in this video and won't get any lag. I am tempted to turn it off if we do get some lag later on, so we'll see how that pans out. But basically, since I haven't actually done anything about this city in over a year, I wanted to show off where the city's at the moment, and especially the new stuff. So in particular, I think down this way, most of this stuff you would have seen. This is my older stuff, which was already built last time. And what I kind of plan on doing is mainly focusing on this side of the city, because I spent most of my time recently building on this side of the city, the more north side of Tokyo Tower, which is kind of the center point of the city. So we're going to jump to a map of the city in a second, and I'll kind of talk you guys through that, and then yeah, we'll just go from there. So here I've got a map of the entire city open. Also, as you can see, I'm no longer showing you guys this through Minecraft maps, because before I had all my maps inside Tokyo Tower in a big room, a giant map room. That's still there, but this is more up to date, and it shows you in more detail and the entire picture. So this is just a program called Unmined. It does a pretty decent job at mapping the city, even though the colors are a bit weird. Like the Tokyo Tower is white for some reason because redstone doesn't show up as red on this. I don't know why, but anyway. So I'm not really 100% sure what was built last time you guys checked in with me and my city build, but I'm pretty sure 90% of the lower city here was already built. There's this kind of New York-y style section around here with the more Art Deco type buildings. That was somewhat built by the time I last did that video. Got a big church here, or a cathedral that I was working on. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that. I might do a separate video on that if you haven't. Down here we got our shopping center and an ice rink and a bunch of other stuff, and this is a little area where I make custom maps that I can actually use to detail some of these builds. This actually says sushi in the Japanese, and you can guess where I would use that. And then we got a Michael Jackson Thriller album cover. So I've been using that to decorate some of my builds, like record stores and restaurants and other things. But this section up here, this is all pretty much new. So the funny thing is, I actually barely worked on the city for the majority of the year that I have been kind of absent from this channel. I actually pretty much started working on the city again at the beginning of this year, so 2022, if not kind of a few months in. So all this work here, all this build, took me maybe 3 months of work on this world. Some pretty intensive builds are in this area, so I'm really keen to actually show you. And of course I actually have imported my Japanese castle, the Matsumoto-inspired castle, into this world because it was in my previous iteration of the city, so I actually copied and pasted it in and kind of integrated it into the land. You'll see that in a second. What I'm currently working on in the city, it's my ongoing project at present, is actually this section here, and in fact you can see it kind of snaking through most of this build, and that is this huge railway line which has this grand station here in the sort of city center area. So this is what I've been working on, in particular detailing the inside of the station and some of the shops and things in there and a whole bunch of stuff in there. But I spent a lot of time on roads and getting the curves right and all that sort of stuff, and just really trying to rethink this place from the ground up and deleting stuff that just wasn't fitting and trying to make it more realistic and ergonomic and just as nice as possible. So this is the main area we're going to look at. In a future video, if you guys are curious or interested, I might show you some of the other stuff further down here. But again, I don't think I've really touched that since beforehand. So let's jump into it. So before we do anything crazy, let's stick around Tokyo Tower here. I'm just going to kind of show you how the tower is looking now. I think it looks so nice with shaders on. I'm not always happy with shaders. I've tried a couple of different versions of them, and in certain times of day I think they look a little too gray, and then others that are a bit more vibrant, they have some weird unnecessary features, like I don't like the night sky, or the lighting's too yellow, or I haven't found a perfect one. This one seems fairly neutral enough. I forgot what it's called, but I might put that in the description if you guys are curious. It's a pretty common one that a lot of people use. But I do love the lighting here, and it really makes the city kind of come alive, which I really like. But hopefully we can have our render distance up really high so I can show you this place. I'm going to start off by showing you a little bit of that train line, because the city here is based on Tokyo. I'm trying to get a Tokyo vibe from the city. It's nowhere near accurate in a lot of ways. But I'm trying to get that vibe, and one thing that really helps define Tokyo is this massive railway lines that go through the city on these raised tracks. Oh, I really love this section right here, where we've got the highway interchange and the railway line going over these roads here, and it just looks so cool to just go under here. It just reminds me of playing GTA or something like that, and just those really sort of snaking noodle-like road systems that kind of intertwine. And I'm really proud of this because there's lots of curves here and everything is kind of off-grid, and it's really nice. So I really dig this section. It's really kind of dingy in a really cool way, if that makes any sense. I don't know, it just feels realistic to me, so I like that section. But I used World Edit to kind of get these curves going here, and then I re-edited them by hand. And as you can see, there's really no way of making these railway lines look good aesthetically when you're close up to them, when they're all curving and doing these weird things, especially since my rails, I primarily use, as you can see, anvils and wood with slabs of cobblestone in between them to kind of mimic rails. When you start angling them and putting curves in the railway line, it kind of gets really messy and nasty looking when you're close up. From a distance, it's really effective. Really does look like railway lines. And I used a feature in World Edit where you can kind of copy and paste something, but when you copy it you can actually rotate it by a few degrees. And what I did is I copied a small section of normal track, rotated it a tiny bit, pasted it, then rotated that a little bit more, pasted it after that again, and then you gradually build this curve. It's kind of difficult to master, and it's sometimes not very aesthetically pleasing if you make it too janky, but it does make building something like this a lot easier and a lot faster than doing the curve by hand. Over here you can actually see probably what was the most difficult curve out of this whole thing, because I did have to do a substantial amount of it by hand, because we have this bigger railway line that kind of feeds into this smaller, more condensed railway line that goes into the more dense city. So this area here is really unbuilt. This is just, I really haven't done anything in this area in a long time, so I haven't put a lot of attention here for a while. But this is kind of where I'm intending on working on in the future. But I did want to extend this railway line here. So I actually did have this bigger one here originally, and I engineered it so I made it curve quite sharply and then veer down. And also you can see it almost interlocks with this highway here, which is veering down there. So there's a lot of interplay between curves and going up and down on the y-axis with with these things. So that was quite difficult. But yeah, I'm really proud of this sort of train line curve here. So I'm just flying back towards Tokyo Tower now, and I figured may as well just show you some of this stuff. You guys would have probably seen most of this in my older videos if you were following those. Got a KFC, got these buildings here. Now I used to think these buildings were big back when the world height was, 256 odd blocks or whatnot. These now feel like pretty moderate sized buildings. These are no longer skyscrapers in my mind, as they kind of used to be. So Tokyo Tower was meant to be the biggest building in this city. That was kind of the plan. But now there are actually some that are a little bit bigger than it. I'm trying to keep Tokyo Tower still feeling really big. So around it, and this is kind of mimicking how it is in real life in Tokyo, I've actually put a bunch of fairly mid-rise and low-rise buildings, and then sort of surrounding the tower we have more sections of larger city, because Tokyo is so big it doesn't really have like one city center. There's also sort of little districts with their own sort of little skylines of various skyscrapers and things like that. So it's different from a lot of cities where there's kind of just one major skyline. I'm actually sort of playing with that idea of this city as well. So over this side, it's kind of still rendering in, but here's the new city where it's going to be the major skyline in my mind. But way off this side is going to be another little skyline that's going to be pretty substantial as well. And at the moment over there I've got more, they're not loaded in at all, they're a little further down, but we've got those more New York-y style buildings. And I think as I expand the city, I'm actually going to move those further and further away. I kind of want to move away from that New York style because it doesn't really fit this build as much as I'd like. I just wanted the satisfaction of kind of playing with that style, but I'm not actually going to kind of keep it permanently. They're more like placeholders. Anyway, I'm going to set time today. Hold on. Sorry about that. So speaking of those little low-rise buildings, this section here is one that I'm really proud of, and it's one I'm going to definitely flesh out a lot more. And this is like these really dense, very low-rise suburbs that they kind of have just in the middle of Tokyo City. They're these residential sections that are kind of really tight together, really small, thin roads, and look really kind of dingy in their own way, but really charming as well. And I was really trying to mimic that with these builds here. Like, they tend to have these electrical pylons just right through the suburbs here, and they have maybe 3 or 4 story little apartment buildings that are usually very thin, very compact, and there's usually very little sort of space between them and the road. And there's a lot of these throughout Tokyo, and they're just, the little residential areas. And I spent a lot of time on Google Earth just basing a lot of these buildings off of it, and I think from certain angles I did capture that vibe quite well. So I'm really happy about this little suburb here, and I'm definitely going to be expanding it. As you can see here, I was definitely trying to work off-grid again, to the point where some of these houses are just a mess, like this place here. But they do overall make the city look a lot more dynamic when you have stuff that's less blocky, like this one here. And yeah, this kind of gives you the idea. In fact, these buildings actually here look a lot wider. Even though they're all really thin and stuck together, they do even look a bit more spacious here than they did in Google Earth when I was actually looking at these suburbs. They are really sort of tight and packed together. But yeah, some of these buildings are directly copied off of that, as well as the placement of like these little car parks and parking spots. And then we have these sort of more traditional houses mixed in as well. And it's just, a really nice sort of dense area that you can really do some cool things in and some cool build ideas. So I really tried playing around with that, lots of plants and lots of little homey decorations to kind of make it feel more lived in and kind of rustic. So this is all definitely new, and yeah, I'm definitely going to be putting in more of these areas around here. Now, I'm not sure if I showed you guys this building here. It's based off what I imagine is a school, which is actually really close to Tokyo Tower, and the stadium here, as well as this building here. This is just straight off of Google Earth. I based it off of that. I think it turned out pretty nice. Again, we got those off-grid angles. This one's not furnished. A lot of the buildings that I have built here are not furnished, but I do try and put in at least the floors and whatever else to just make them look a little bit nicer, just so they're not super empty from the outside. So I do try and put in furniture when I can. Like if you take a look here, yeah, it's got some stuff in there. I'm really proud of this road system that goes up to this bridge here. I don't know how accurate it is to how like a real life road would go, but I'm hoping that it is. I tried to get the road markings in there. But again, this curve here and just the way it attaches to this bridge, and yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. But around here, we start to get to the proper dense city. So we still have these sort of mid-rise buildings here, and Tokyo is filled with these just really dense streets of, again, very thin buildings that are just big facades, these big walls of windows that just go straight up, and some of them are really thin and packed together, and then a lot of them have these sort of stairways on the outside. This is very typical of like a Tokyo style building, and these balconies and stuff like that. So I'm trying to incorporate a lot of those in and really pack them together. And this is all new, so you wouldn't have seen this in the previous video. And even just the roadways, I really spent a lot of time looking at the map of this area and actually going in Paint, Microsoft Paint, and just drawing in roads and seeing what looks good and feels more natural. And then I went in and built them in the game. So I planned it out a little bit more. It's more to the grid, but I think it really works in this area. And something I really like is these billboards. So I built a lot of these billboards. I looked in a lot of Google images of advertisements in Japan, and I really tried to mimic them. This specific one here is from a scene in a Godzilla movie, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. There's a classic scene of just Ghidorah, the big dragon monster. And there's this particular billboard on one of the buildings, and I tried to capture it perfectly here, and I think it suits this building really nicely. And if you go down here, just going, don't worry, we'll get to the bigger buildings, but we're just going for these mid-rises here. Yeah, I think it looks really nice. This area really fleshes out the city, because the city is very sparse at the moment. I do tend to try and keep it really open, so I still have possibilities of fitting in buildings in various different areas as I go, and not having one area be too overbuilt at once. That way the style of the city feels more consistent, I feel. But here we got more of these billboards, which I'm really proud of. So most of these buildings, again, this one doesn't have anything in it. I'm imagining it would be some sort of office block. Especially with these shaders, I feel it does look really realistic and really similar to how a lot of those buildings looked on Google Earth. And down here we get into one of my favorite parts of the city, which is this little mall area. And I based it roughly off of a local mall area in my home city. But again, you can see we got lots of little shops here. Lots of plants, areas to sit, areas where there will be shops in the future. So this is probably the thing that takes the longest in building this, is actually filling these areas with shops and various details. So the big buildings usually are pretty quick to put together, but it's really detailing the shops and making them look realistic and cool, which is what both makes the place worth exploring, and it's both what takes the most time. So here you can see we've got my record store chain in the city called Groove Records. I'm really proud of that. I put this logo up on every version of it. There's a bunch of them around the city. And you can see where I've been using these custom maps. So here we got what are meant to be shelves filled with records here. And we got some classic album covers on the wall here. Some good classics: King Crimson, Queen, Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Michael Jackson. And yeah, basically just nicely detailed. I do use a lot of player heads when detailing, because I find that they really bring the place to life when you go search up custom player heads. I try to make it as vanilla as possible, but I feel like the custom player heads really add so much that I think it's really worth adding them, since they're technically not a mod, and I think it does so much for the city. Now, we're starting to get to some of these bigger buildings here as we go down the mall here. We got some restaurants and things like that here, but getting some lag. It's probably lag because this building is quite full on because I actually furnished the whole thing. Actually, I did that same technique on a bunch of these skyscrapers. Is the way I build them is I built a couple of floors fully furnished and I copy and paste them all the way up the building. And then I'd go in and do some detail work to try and make the buildings look more unique and less boxy. But that's basically the way I built these skyscrapers here. My logic here is, of course, there's a beautiful river here, so naturally you'd want the land right near it to have some big skyscrapers where there's lots of windows facing out towards the river. So there's lots of riverside views from here. So I started really building up the city from this area. And we got this really intense hue of the golden sunset and the lovely skyline here. The moment this is the tallest building in the city, I think it's pretty cool. I like this sort of round sloping base that I added here. This part isn't furnished, but the rest of the main tower is all furnished. Actually, hold on. There we go. Just jump to day so you can actually see what's going on. But yeah, this is currently the tallest building in the city. It's a little bit bigger than Tokyo Tower is currently, but it might not be in the future if I ever make Tokyo Tower a little bit more big. So we'll see about that. But if we just zoom in, you can see it's basically an office block. And you can see here, these rooms are furnished. There's some like CEO's office there. And if we zoom off to the side here, it is really lagging, so I do apologize about that. We might have to cut the shaders. But in here you can see there's all these computer workstations. So yeah, it's a big office block where people basically work on computers all day. Not the most exciting thing, but pretty realistic for one of these buildings. You can just fly all the way up, get a good look. You can see the big river. The main thing I love about these shaders is the way they change the water. The water is so much nicer because I'm not a fan of the stock blue Minecraft water that we get. It's just too cartoony. But I really love the effect of the more realistic water we get in these shaders packs. I wish there was a way that was pretty much closer to stock Minecraft, but they just changed the water. That would be really nice, I think. That's my big skyscraper here. It might not be the tallest one in this city at some point because I am planning on building a fairly large section of city further up the river that way. And here we got our other two big monolith buildings. We got this big glass building here, which I think is another office building. I'm proud because I made it kind of off-center as well. So it is angled to the side, and just the detailing that I did up on this roof here I'm also really proud of, with the helicopter pad and all these railings and scaffolding details and all that stuff. I think turned out really realistically as well. Again, just go on Google Earth and really look at the city models that they have on there to get an idea for these details. That's the best place, I think. And then we have this building here, which is a massive hotel. So I might just go up to the windows and kind of show you some of these interiors here. For some reason the carpet here, when I was copying and pasting the floors, was really glitched out, and you can see it kind of is missing in some areas. So I've been going in and manually filling that. But here it's still missing on this section of wall, so I do apologize about that. But yeah, this one is again fully furnished because I made it like 2 or 3 floors, and then I copied and pasted that all the way up the building. And they're just, you know, little hotel rooms, basically. It's loosely based, again, off of a real building in Tokyo, but I've kind of had to change the shape of it and make it a little shorter than it is in real life and stuff like that. Just because it was actually kind of too big and clunky looking, especially near Tokyo Tower. I really didn't want it to overshadow that tower. Let's kind of zoom down here, because I've actually got some cool details down near the waterfront here. So one thing which I have built here is this boat. So this is a city cat. Here in Brisbane, Australia, where I live, we have boats called city cats. and they're like public transport. They go up and down the river that kind of runs through the heart of the city, and this is based off of those. And I'm gonna have a bunch of these going basically up and down the river, as well as these CityCat stations or CityCat stops. So this is my attempt at trying to mimic a real one. It was really difficult to do because they have some of these detailings like the line work with the yellow and the black and the white stripes on it, that doing it in square meter blocks is really difficult, but I think I got the vibe right. So if you're curious, Google CityCat Brisbane and you'll see a bunch of them. They all have slightly different designs, but they're really similar to this kind of theme. And here we have the stop. So these things would pull up to these stops. You get in or you get off, and then you go up here, and then you can be on your merry way and enjoy the rest of the city. And up here we got this green line which follows this road quite tightly. And again, these roads, these were a big project in themselves. Building these curved roads is something I had to do basically by hand, manually, getting these curves right, and the lane spacing and all of that. It was an absolute pain, but it's so rewarding once you do it. This green line here, it's got a little bike path, and the bike path actually joins up to this walking path, which is the grey part here, and it goes off on this walkway, which you can go have a walk or bike or whatever by the river. And we actually have something similar again where I live in Brisbane, Australia, and I based it off of that after a lovely night having a walk on this the real life equivalent of this in my city. So yeah, I've been incorporating a lot of different influences, but mainly Tokyo, but also stuff that I see in my own city and in real life to kind of give it a more realistic feel. I really like the look of the city from this angle right here, because the variety in the buildings and just the denseness of them is really built up in this area. So I'm really proud of that, because like I said, a lot of this city is really sparse feeling. Something that makes the city really come to life is adding like lamp posts like this, for example, or even more so, I think, stuff like, parking garages, but even more so, these traffic lights. And again, I use these custom player heads as the traffic lights. There are other ways of doing it. I've seen people use banners and all sorts of other things, but these work really well as traffic lights, and I think they look really great. And it definitely makes the city feel more realistic, having all these pillars of lights and traffic lights and all sorts of things, advertisements, all that good stuff. And here we got a bubble tea place. So I don't know what it's like for you guys around the world, but here in Australia, these are really popular. There's like one down every corner when you go to the CBD, the city here. And I recreated a couple of these around the city as well. I call it boba, like for the boba tea. Put a bunch of bathrooms around the place as well, and vending machines. They're really important because in Tokyo there's apparently a lot of vending machines. So I really tried to pack the place with them. Like if we go in here, which I was aiming to make this place kind of like a mall as well, but it's just going to be a lot of work, so I don't know when I'll get to it. But I did pack in a bunch of vending machines of different sorts and stuff like that. Coming up here, got more of this advertising. Of course, Coca-Cola. Spent a lot of time working on these, trying to make them actually legible and as small as possible, because these billboards, making these in Minecraft, they turn out huge if you try and do pixel art in Minecraft. So to make it fit as a billboard takes a lot of work. So I'm really proud of how some of these came out, especially when compared to their real-world counterparts. And over here, just like I've shown in my previous videos, I've just got a bunch of the pre-made ones that I've made, and I just keep them there, and then I copy and paste them around the place when I need them. So that's something that you guys might want to look into doing if you're trying to decorate a city. It really helps bring the place to life. Around here, we got this more sort of old-style building. Just chucked a bed. I actually revamped it somewhat recently as well, because this was actually a modified version of a building I have in a completely different part of the city, and I changed it up a lot. And I'm gonna set the time to earlier in the day just so you guys can see it a little more clearly, as nice as that bright sunlight was. So it's good to mix in a few different types of architectures, because real cities, they do age, they do change over time, and stuff like this will be in real cities. So do be sure to put in things like that. And now finally, this is the main thing I've been working on as of late. And that is this train station here. Of course, we have our platforms up top here. Got our lovely, lovely platforms where you actually catch the trains. Some elevators. Got the yellow lines that you can't step over, or at least shouldn't, like this guy did. And we got our trains themselves and the tracks. And as you can see, it's all connected to the rest of this railway line. And at the moment, I'm in the process of kind of connecting these rails, spreading them between the platforms, and then reconnecting them way over at the end over there. So far the process is going pretty well, but it is, again, a little time consuming because you got to really do these curves justice. You really got to do them right. And there's a lot of finagling, and especially when you really can't do much about stuff like this where it just looks like a mess, you really have to spend a lot of time finagling it just to get it to look right and for the curves to be smooth enough to be believable as something a train could actually maneuver, because trains are kind of picky about sharp turns. So that's what I've been working on at the moment, and I'm actually really proud of how this is turning out. And I think it adds so much to the city, this train station, because it really helps connect the whole thing together. Down here is where stuff gets interesting. So you can see you got actually numbered the platforms again with the player heads. They're just so great at just adding details. But here we actually have the inside of the platform, and I think personally I don't really like the shaders being on when I'm showing interiors, because I find that they just get too dark and gloomy and weird looking. So hold on, I'm just gonna turn off the shaders to show you this part. Alright, so you can see we got no more shaders, everything is vanilla Minecraft. I think interiors personally look better in vanilla Minecraft, because shaders look great for exteriors. Like we can come out to the exterior, see it doesn't really look as dynamic as it did beforehand. It's a lot flatter looking, but at least we don't have as much glare and the colors are a bit brighter, so I do like that actually. So that is one thing that kind of vanilla Minecraft has over shaders, at least depending on whichever shaders you're actually using. But the most interesting thing is the interior here. Got our main entrance here. This basically just leads into this ticket area where you scan your go-card or whatever equivalent you're using. Got some information ticket office here, vending machine, elevators, stairs down to some cool stuff, which I'll show you in a second. Map of the train station in its current form at least. More elevators going up to each platform. It's loosely based off Tokyo train station, but also based off of a big train station that I have in the city I live in, called Roma Street train station. So any Brisbaneites or whatever you call yourselves, people from Brisbane would recognize that, hopefully. So yeah, we got stairways that lead up to each platform, and each platform is numbered. I'm really proud of this, how this is turning out. Down here we got more of these scanners to let you in to go to your train station. These are meant to be like the machines where you buy your train tickets. Got more elevators here. This is just dingy space, but it does lead to what is meant to be a busway down here under the station, and it's meant to, you know, come out through these openings on either side. And if we go down here from the busway or any of the other stairways down, we're led into this little sort of shopping district where we've got a bunch of stores and restaurants and stuff like that. Again, the way back here, you go to the busway, so buses, and I got that written in Japanese too. More elevators, so you can get down here if you need an elevator. Clothing stores. I really like this design for like clothing racks. It's not perfect, but it does do the job to really fill out stores, because one of the things that's really difficult I find in Minecraft, especially building modern cities, is filling out stores, because I have to build a lot of them, and trying to think of new things to basically sell and make stores look full is really difficult. So building a shopping center and making it look realistic is really difficult. So I have to use a lot of player heads. These are meant to be like piled stacks of clothing, like shirts and whatnot. These are meant to be, mimic shelves, obviously. These are meant to mimic like towels or clothing sort of hanging. And these are meant to be racks of clothing. So it's all meant to, come together and give the impression that this is actually a clothing store, and I think it works well. One of the ideas I had was to build a flower shop. It turned into more of a plant nursery, but hey, it's something new that that works well, and again, lots of player heads. So, if somebody wants to buy flowers on their trip through the train station or while they're waiting for a train, they can. And around here we got our traditional Japanese ramen store. So in here, got that more traditional style at the front, and in here we got a place where you can actually get ramen. Again, player heads and these banners are great for decorating these places. We got the kitchen in here, some things cooking, some of these custom maps which I made, which look really nice with bowls of alcohol of some kind, some pieces of meat. Yeah, the details really are what make these places fun to explore. And these stools are really great for filling out these areas as chairs. And this area is actually based off of an area when I was searching images through Google Earth of Tokyo train station. The train station does have a lot of these corridors like this, just filled with little shops and restaurants and things. So that's what I was trying to mimic here. Again, we got another Groove Records. Pretty much the same thing you saw in the other place. Yeah, I really dig this place, because I'm a big fan of records and record stores. More toilets over here. This is one of my favorite parts of the city. I'm really proud of this. This is like a sort of toys and collectibles kind of store. It's based off of kind of a line of stores we have here in Australia called Zing. They're like a place where if you want to buy some like pop vinyls or something like that, or really sort of trendy pop culture-y stuff, like t-shirts and Marvel related stuff, you'd come to one of these places. So I based it off of that, and there's this wall of pop vinyls. These are again custom player heads, and luckily there was a bunch of pop vinyl themed ones, and I was able to make this cool wall here. Aside from that, one thing that I really dig about this place is I built this like miniature little town here. So it's a miniature city basically built in Minecraft with its own little miniature town here in this toy store or collectible store or whatever. You can think of this as like a little model train kind of display place, but here we've got, of course, these dark grey lines of the roads, these buttons are cars, and these custom player heads are all houses, and the little trees are little trees. I think it turned out really cool. And this lagged out my computer so much because I imported this huge poster of Mothra, so this movie here. It was really difficult to do because I had to do it in like 12 different maps, I think. And the amount of space that this thing covered was massive, and it just lagged it out, because there's programs where you can import photos into them, and then they give you like this code that you put into like a command block, or you paste it into the world, and then you have this massive, or not necessarily massive, but you have the equivalent of that in maps, and then you can paste that around your world from actual images. So there are ways of doing that. I haven't done it in ages because, again, it's been a year since I last filmed anything for you guys, and this was done actually much closer to a year ago than now when I actually did it. So I remember it just covered so much ground and lagged out the world so much that I had to destroy it after I got these maps made from it. But it looks great posted up in this store here. So I'm a big, Godzilla and Mothra fan. And we got a bunch of other custom player heads, also of Godzilla characters as well. And a bunch of stuff like that. Here we got more clothing store. As you can see, I've actually copied and pasted a bunch of these clothing stores and only or just these stores in general into that mall area that I showed you guys earlier, because these things take a long time to detail and to design and whatnot, so I don't really mind copying and pasting them, because I'm more keen to have the bigger picture of the city built up with more buildings and have some of these stores duplicated. It doesn't really bother me. We've got another bubble tea place. Again, one that they copied and pasted and I showed you earlier. And here we got another Japanese restaurant, this being the sushi one, and I'm really proud of this one. I think it turned out great, especially with this custom map that I wrote, sushi. That took a while to actually make, but it's definitely worth it. And you got this interior here with the little plates, the napkins, all that good stuff, all the stools. Come around the front here. Got some custom player heads of fish. Again, those maps there look great as detailing. And my favorite detail here, the fish tank. The thing that bugs me is that these glow squid, they keep spawning in like every water that I put down, and then I have these horrible bloody squid like infesting places I don't want them. So I didn't put that squid in there, it just spawned in there, and it's bugging me to hell because I wanted it to just be a fish tank with these little fish. So if you guys know how to make glow squid not spawn, let me know, because this world, I'd really appreciate that. Here we've got our kitchen at the back where we got, all the sushi stuff happening. We got the dried kelp here. Got some sushi here. Good stuff. Pots on the stove. Yeah, I have a lot of fun detailing these restaurants in particular because I like to make them feel really nice, like places I'd like to visit myself. So, that's about all the stores I have in this area, but we got more toilets and we got something down there which I'll show in a sec. But just down here we've got, another information desk and more of these vending machines everywhere. But down here, let's go. We got our first subway system. So my previous version of this city build, I did have a subway system, and I thought I'd bring that back. And I thought it would be really fitting to have one underneath the main train station where, you can catch a big train to this station and then get off and change onto one of these trains to go somewhere else. This one doesn't really go anywhere as of yet, but eventually I want to actually have a perfectly interconnected railway system where everything makes sense and actually kind of flows through the city, but as of right now it just goes into the void. So that's something I'll be working on in the future. And one last thing I want to show you in this train station, if we just zoom right through it, the end over here has some elevators, and those elevators actually do go somewhere. Whenever I do place an elevator, I like to actually have it go somewhere. In particular, there's this weird room where you kind of go around the back here, and you got these elevators. And if we just fall right down the bottom here, you can see I actually put in the effort and built a massive car park. And it's actually a couple of stories high, so this I actually built in the sky, and then I copied and pasted it and made it underground. So I found that a lot easier to build than just kind of like building underground into the void. And as you can see, it just loops around. You've got a lovely car park. Because one thing you need when you're building a city, even in Minecraft, is a lot of parking. Because cities have a lot of parking, and underground is probably the main place for it. Although in Japan they do have like mid-rise buildings that are basically just car parks, but above ground, and they're just these buildings that usually don't have any windows on them. I actually did build one of those that I showed you guys earlier. So if we fly over here, and now you can actually see the city without shaders on, what it actually looks like. Let me know what you think of the city with and without shaders, whether it makes a big difference. But right over there, again, that building with that billboard straight ahead, that's the one that is basically windowless, and I was experimenting with these andesite walls and andesite and trying to create this cool texture, and this one I figured would be perfect for one of these buildings that's just a car park. So again, we got the big P on it for the parking garage and this closed door, because inside it's actually empty. But I thought that would just look cool as a car park. Oh, and here we have a bookstore, by the way. Yeah, just because. So that's pretty much it for this part of the city. I'm really proud of how it's turning out, and I'm glad I can finally share it with you guys, because it's about time. This has been, yeah, over a year. I don't know where that time flies, but I hope to keep working on this and, yeah, just permanently keep working on this world and keep sharing it with you and just seeing how massive this thing can get to and how detailed and all that good stuff. So, again, I'm super happy that the world height has now increased, because that really opens this place up potential-wise for some new stuff. But as it is, yeah, really happy with how it's going. So let me know down below if there's any builds that you want me to add into this city here, anything that you think this place is missing. Of course, bear in mind there's still a huge chunk of city I didn't show in this particular video because I did previous videos on it, or it was just kind of too sparse, or I don't remember that I didn't show it to you guys or whatnot. And yeah, let me know what you think down below. So yeah, that is it for this video, guys. It's probably dragged on way too long, but there was a lot to show and a lot to update you guys on. So I'll keep you guys posted about how it keeps going. And till then, may your life be awesome. Peace out, guys. Bye.